What's up, y'all? My name is Corey Stay Trapping with Trap Talks, where we discuss the intersection of culture and tech. And today we got the special guest, Anthony. How do I pronounce your last name? I don't want to screw it up.
Alegrete.
Alegrete. Okay, Anthony Alegrete. He is the co-founder or founder of 40 Tons, which is a cannabis brand, creative director for Right C, um, which basically is an online recruitment marketplace that unlocks new revenue by offering white label career services to its candidates. Producer for Blue Light Films, and was also an adjunct professor of business at California International Business University. Man, you doing a lot.
Yeah. I don't do the producing too much anymore, but um I was an adjunct, 2 years ago. But my two main focuses is 40 tons and Rightsy at the moment.
Got you, got you. So yeah, let's start from, I guess, start from the top. Where you from originally?
Originally from Los Angeles, California.
Okay, LA. Um, cool. So what was it like, growing up in LA? I know you hold on, did you grow up at would you so you was I don't want to date you or nothing, but like what was it like during the whole Tupac Biggie thing going on in LA?
That's when I grew up. Yeah, man. I
Oh, okay,
graduated.
okay.
I graduated high school in 1997. So that was right in the heart of it. I remember when that happened, man. I was working at Hard Rock Cafe up at City Walk, and when Pac got shot and killed, and man, it hurt. Like the whole city felt it. It was just like when Nipsey had passed. It was a different era, man. Hip hop was different then. Hip hop was, you know, it hadn't gone to the bling bling era yet. It hadn't. It had the gangster rap and the regular rap hadn't crossed over yet. It was still kind of separated, and so it was more authentic, more real back then. And so you know, I miss it. I miss those days. I miss the Tupac, Cube, Snoop, Dre, all those old school, West Coast artists. Um, it was like it was just more real back then than it is now. Now, like anyone can do it. Everyone is, a studio. Anyone can, be a gangster. Anyone could just, it's all kind of just fabricated for TV now. But back then, it was more real and more authentic. And so the Biggie Tupac beef, it got serious for a minute. I mean, the media did a lot with that, but it was a lot. It was
Yeah.
it was definitely different.
So during that time, if you was from the East Coast of New York, did you really have a hard time moving around in LA? Was it like advised to not go to LA?
I don't think so. I wasn't really old enough back then. I was, 17, 18 years old when that happened. So I wasn't really moving around like that. Super tough to really know. But a lot of the people, at least in the industry, said that it was all, media fabricated. But I mean, if you were in Pac's camp and Big's camp, I'm sure it wasn't like that. But it
Yeah.
was it was pretty serious. It's been like that in LA forever. Like LA just has this culture of being ruthless with out of towners. You know what I mean? So it's like even to this day, it's like that.
So are you the only child? You had siblings or anything?
Yeah, I'm the only child with my mother. My father remarried and had two kids, but I'm not that close with them.
Mm, mm, got it. Um, so yeah, you growing up in LA, um, you graduate high school, then what's actually next for you?
I start hustling. I got accepted to colleges, and I could have gone that route, and I didn't. I have a small regret that I didn't do that, but I could have gone into the military. I didn't. And I just started hustling at age 18. Just yeah, got to making money at a really young age, and kind of got in trouble at a young age. But I also was able to like secure jobs at a young age. Like I worked at a real estate company when I was 18 years old as like the office administrator as an 18-year-old kid, and usually that was a job that at the time was, you know,
Middle
usually
aged
for,
woman.
women in their 40s, or older were usually in that role, right? It was a role that like it was like an executive administrative assistant type role. So it was a role that required, experience and whatnot. And so an 18-year-old kid would never usually have that, but I was able to get it.
Yeah. How did you become so good at people with dealing with people at such a young age?
That's a good question, man. I grew up, I don't want to say, I wasn't destitute or nothing, but we were poor. We didn't have a lot. So I grew up in neighborhoods that typically had a lot of minorities in them. And so at a young age, I started getting along with people. I played a lot of video games back then. The arcades were a big thing. That was like when Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat were first coming out. So there
Yeah.
was all these arcade games, at liquor stores and places like that. So I bonded with people over playing video games. I was also into sports. And so when you're into sports, you kind of get along with different people.
Right.
And I just always was just someone that, enjoyed the camaraderie of being in a group. And I was, fast. I was a hustler. You know what I mean? So like that mentality people liked, and I never judged anybody based on any one particular thing. And I got along with everybody. And I learned that at a really young age, especially, growing up as a single child, you don't have that many people in the house. So you go out and you search for that out in the world, and so it's kind of been my superhero power since I was young.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, where I'm from, we call it, when you get into the streets, like jump off the porch, right? Like, what was that moment where you like, man, I gotta start getting it. I gotta by any means necessary. Because sounds like you had other options, but what was
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I was getting it at a young age because my mom didn't have a lot of money. So, I was figuring out how to hustle here, hustle there, little things there, gambling, video games. I mean, whatever it was, I was always just trying to get paid. I used to in LA in the early 90s, there was this thing called racking, which was like you would steal basically like videos or DVDs or tapes or different things like that, and then you would sell it. So I was always trying to figure out, ironically, in my background, there's the tape right there. Um, but like, I was always trying to figure out how to get things and sell them at profits. So I was doing that at a super, super young age, because we didn't have much money. There was no real extra money for me, so I had to go out and get it. And then I just developed the talent for, hustling.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you hustling, you doing it. So in the midst of you hustling, you getting these job offers. So were you like looking at those job offers as like a joke? Or you like I'm
No, no, I was looking at it as a way to like move up, but I wasn't getting jobs like, working at McDonald's. I was trying to get jobs at like, real businesses that could like advance my career. And real estate was one of them. So I was working at Bradbury Realtors, Coldwell Banker at like a very young, early age. And I've always been hip to the computer. So, I had a Commodore 164, or excuse me, Commodore 128. Was it Commodore? Was it a 60? Commodore 64 or Commodore 128? I don't remember what it was, but
yeah.
it was one of those computers at a real early age. So I've always been into computers, and having a computer skill, especially back then, you stood out, and I've always been a creative person. So like my role was making sure that the listings were up, making sure that the different sales of the real estate were in the magazines and all that kind of stuff. So like I learned all that stuff at a really young age, and I was being mentored by, people that were 30, 40 years old at the time. So they took a liking to me because I was always someone that like could be a role player. I was the kid that always got picked for every team all the time, but I wasn't the best player, right? So I wasn't the guy that was like that was the number one player, but I was always a player that always got picked because I was always a contributor,
Mm.
right? So so when you play baseball and you have your lineup, like your one, two, usually your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are like your solid players, but your heavy hitters are usually put at number 3 or 4, and then like your base hit people are usually at like 1 or 2, and I would always get picked to be like at 1 or 2. Yeah.
So I can't imagine like how do you design something on a Commodore? So you designing ads on a Commodore? Like what was the equivalent of Adobe back
No, I
then?
don't. I wasn't designing ads on the Commodore. The Commodore was just that was in the early days. Like we had like I think Pentiums. You know what I mean? By the time I was 18, but like at like 13, 14, we were playing games.
Oh, okay, okay. Because this is before this is before the floppy disk got smaller, right? The Commodore, because the Commodore was out around Atari time,
Yeah,
right? If I'm not mistaken.
exactly. They had the five
Okay.
and a quarter floppies or whatever that was. They were kind of big. They were, yeah, and then they got the 3.5s later,
Yeah.
which was an Atari. Yeah, in fact, my grandfather had an Atari computer. I love that Atari computer.
Mm.
I miss that Atari computer. That was a good computer.
What you like the most about it?
Um, they had this game that was very similar to like The Sims, but it wasn't The Sims. It was like what was it called? It was like Leisure Suit Larry. I don't know if you ever heard of that,
Nah.
but there was a game called Leisure Suit Larry, and it was like The Sims, kind of. You know what I mean? It was like the
Yeah.
first iteration of what The Sims was.
Yeah. 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 The Sims. My late brother had an Atari. He used to tell me about the Atari. And I remember Nintendo because Mortal Kombat 3. I remember Mortal Kombat 3 came out and all that. So I was I think I was probably still in a diaper around that time. So yeah.
That's funny.
So what are like the you talked about working at these different real estate companies early on. Like what are some early like principles you learned from working at those realty companies that you still use to this day?
Well, definitely, I learned, um, like position, right? Like I learned at a young age that age doesn't matter. It's about how much work and drive you put into something, and that if you put your all into it and you're eager to learn, people are going to give you the game. And I remember at that time I had a lot of really good mentors that used to work there, um that would really invest into me. I mean, so much so I got kicked out of my house when I was like it was either when I was like at the end of being 17 or like early 18. I was funking with my mom, and so she threw me out, and I needed a place to live, and I put a message out to all the realtors. Like at the time, you had this thing where you could send, instead of, I don't even know if email was fully out then, but like you could send a voice recording to everyone's voicemail. And I said, hey, I need a place to stay. Does anyone have an extra room? And like a bunch of the realtors like let me come, like figured out a way that I could get a place. And one of them let me come stay with them for a week. And then after that, another one let me come and like rent one of their rooms full time for almost 6 months. So it had to do with like working hard and like showing up. And I think when people see that, they invest into you. And so I got that game at a really young age. I also learned, like I also learned like the hard part of corporate, because there were some other people there too that were, jealous. And I allowed my immaturity to get the best of me sometimes when I was confronted with that jealousy, and I ended up getting fired from one of the spots because I let that lady get the best of me. And come to find out, like 6 months later, she ended up like deleting all the hard drives, and she was a horrible person to the whole company. And but no one had believed me that it was this lady's fault. um we had got into it over something, and she blamed me, and then I got fired for it. But then like 6 months later, she ended up like sabotaging the entire company really, really bad. So I just learned at a young age, you got to, be careful who you trust. but then also at the same time too, that if you put the work in, you're gonna get the mentors that you need if you really really try hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so what did you do after you left that realty company? You went to another one?
I went full time hustling after that. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So I just was hustling. I was doing the videotape thing, and I was, the cannabis didn't come for another couple of years or so, but at like 18, 19, yeah, man, I was hustling hard, trying to figure it out, trying to be an entrepreneur, throwing parties, trying to figure out, where I wanted to be, but just, kind of being in the mix in the culture in the LA Hollywood scene of going to the different clubs and trying to figure out how to, you know, make my way.
yeah. So I always wondered this because, like, and I ask people who are like from Chicago this too. Like, how do you maneuver around? How did you maneuver around at that age where there's like a lot of gang culture happening and not get caught up in the mix of the gangs?
Yeah, well, I was never involved in a gang, so I never really had to deal with that. I always, you know, worked with the different gang people, and red and blue made green for me. So it was like, I kind of always got a free pass because I was not the guy that was instigating kind of life. So, if you go and you pretend to be a gang member and you go and you try to get involved in the politics and this and that, you're gonna get swept up in it. But if you don't, then usually you're looked at as a civilian, and for the most part, they're gonna leave you alone. I also had an affinity, like I was saying earlier, like to the older people. So no matter what, I would always like kind of go to the OG, or I would go to the CEO, or I would go to whoever was in charge, and I'd build a relationship with those people. And then from there, when you're dealing with the people at the top, then everybody beneath them aren't going to do nothing to you because you're working with them. And so I did that both in the street side and in the corporate side.
Mm.
Um, and even at a young age, when I was 10, 11 years old, I was hanging out with kids that were 13, 14, or when I was 13 or 14, I was hanging out with kids that were 16, 17. I just was always someone that just flocked to older people, and they would give me the wisdom. I was like the little homie that they wanted to invest in. And so on the gang side, that's how it was, and I never really got involved with the gangs. And then every now and then I would think I was tough, and I had a couple of friends that were gang members or this or that, and you know I got I got jumped once for that, you know what I mean? And I was with my buddy Simeon, rest in peace. He's tattooed on me. He actually got shot and killed when I was younger. But
Mm. Sorry about
he
that.
he and I were trying to floss for some girls, and it was these like little gang member girls, and we were we we were dressed in that kind of attire, and then all these guys pulled up on us, and I had to like I had to like I couldn't fake it. Like I had to like push the line like I was involved in all that. And in doing that, I got the respect, but then I also ended up getting beat up. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I realized at a young age like that shit ain't for me, and I don't it's not cool. This isn't my thing. And I was always about making money. Whether you're a gang member or you're a corporate person, everybody wants to make money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you center your stuff around making money, then usually you're you're exempt from all the riffraff because people want to make money with you.
So that's how you was like able to throw parties and then got it.
Exactly. Yup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm not, this big dude and fighting guy, and I'm not this tough guy. You know what I mean? But I would surround myself with people that were respected and people that did have the knowledge or people that did have the keys in both sides. You know what I mean? Like with corporate and with the streets. You know what I mean? Like at the real estate company, I would always go with the top selling agents, so everybody had respect for those people.
Yeah.
I would go wash the cars of the top selling agents or the CEO type people of them so that I could get in with them. And
Yeah.
then once I was in with them, it was I was a part of the team.
Mm. Got it. All right. So you hustling, and then you Tell us about the first stint when you got locked up? I think it was like the first one or something you did some time.
Um, yeah, I mean, the first time I got arrested, well, the first time I got arrested, I was like 16, 17, but and I went to jail a few times when I was 18 and stupid shit, petty thefts and different things like that. But then when I was 23 years old, I ended up going to jail. I had given somebody a fake ID, and then they got in trouble, and then I ended up going to jail for that. It was crazy. I didn't even realize that you can get in that much trouble for giving someone a fake ID. But that person went and used that fake ID to go and like scam and do things. So I got sucked into all their bullshit. And yeah, I was young. I was 23, stupid. Um, you know, uh, but I learned a lot from that. I met some really good people that to this day are still my friends. Um, and just it is what it was, man. Going to jail was nothing I'm proud of. It's stupid actually. But I learned a lot from it, and um, you know, I mean, I regret going to jail and I regret those things, but I don't really regret it too much because, it was all learning experiences, and it took me doing and going through those moments in order to get myself to where I am today mentally, right? And physically, and where I stand in society now.
Yeah,
So to me, I think if you can survive prison, you can survive the streets, and you can survive the underworld, you can survive the overworld, you can survive corporate. It's nothing, but it's
mm,
it's you there's a thin line between winning and losing in the underworld versus in corporate, So it's like if you can survive there, you can survive anywhere. And just like, anywhere, cream rises to the top, and you know, there's good and bad in everywhere. And if you do right and you treat people right and you do good business, no matter where you're at, you're always going to be respected if you're doing good and positive things, even if you're in the underworld. And I never was really involved in anything like nasty or violent or anything like that. Like we sold weed, you know what I mean? Or small little petty hustles. Like, so it was like we weren't hurting nobody, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
not that I'm trying to like say that it's okay to commit crime even if it's non-violent, but nonetheless, like it's I've never been the one to to cannibalize off people, or or hurt people, or you know what I mean. Like it's always just been in the pursuit of making money, and the inventory was what was illegal or something like that, right?
Right. Right. So when did the idea around like 40 tons come about? And where did the name come from?
Yeah, so at the time, my partner Corvain Cooper had a life sentence without parole over a nonviolent cannabis offense. And he we didn't know if he was going to get out of jail. We didn't know what was going on. And we got presented with this opportunity to start a brand, but we had to go and start it ourselves. We had to do everything ourselves, and it was me um, that had to do it all, right? Because he was in jail, and so L'Oreal came to me and was like, why don't we do this? But then someone has to physically go and make it, and someone has to actually design everything and do all this stuff. So that's where I come in, and it was during the pandemic, um, and we um, we're on Clubhouse really heavy. We were promoting, you know, that my friend was in prison and can you sign the
Vision.
petition, and so we got really big on there, and so in that pursuit, I met some really good people. I met a guy named Aaron Silverman, and Naftali Rodriguez, and they were with a company called Media Jail, and at the time, they were it was an agency for branding. And so I met them, and they agreed to help build the brand with me, and so we built it. And the original name actually came from Corvain. When we were trying to build this company, we didn't know what name we wanted to build, and we wanted it to be impactful. And Corvain suggested that we should call it 40 tons, and that was because the newspaper article read California man sentenced to life in prison for 40 tons of weed. And we didn't know if it was going to be a good name or not. And we were like, man, we don't want to spit on the face of the law. And like, It's not like we're trying to say that we're trying to commit crime. No, we're just trying to turn a negative into a positive. There's thousands of people still locked up for something that, many people are now profiting off of and, conducting legal business over. And so we just want to have our share of it. And so that's where the name came from. And then we just started, working it. And then we hit the winning lottery ticket when, former President Donald Trump released Corvain on his last day of office. And so we just been hitting the ground running ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Um, how much weed is 40 tons? Like, is that like one container, two containers? Like, how much weed is?
It's 80,000 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So there was never even, an ounce of weed found. It was just all old stuff from what had happened years prior and what different people said did this, and then they added it all up and, bank transactions, and they added it all up over multiple people over multiple years. And because Corvain went to trial, they put it all on him,
Mm.
so that's how they got to that number. But the name, you know what I mean, signifies that, of course. There's still 40,000 prisoners still locked up at the time over cannabis. 40 acres and a mule is a big number in the Black community. So the number 40 has a very powerful number within the Black community. And, we're Black owned, we're system impacted owned, we're justice impacted, right? So the number 40 was really important. And instead of it being FORTY, we wanted it to be a number, because if you can add numbers to your branding when it should be letters, it's like something different. You know what I mean? Kind of like Motel 6. It's this number 6 as opposed to it saying SIX, right? So different things like that, in terms of branding and graphics. The chains represent, imprisonment. C.O. Corvain, Cooper, right? The C looking backwards is his life sentence. The C looking forward is, freedom. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of meaning to the to 40 tons, and we wanted to be different, and we wanted our branding to stand out when you compared it to other brands out there.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on like Clubhouse, because I remember that's around the time we met. We met through EYL, and we
Yeah.
started like our investment group. Um, but why was like Clubhouse so popping at that time?
Well, I think Clubhouse was popping because the world was indoors. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? When the pandemic hit and people weren't going out, there was a pocket of time where Clubhouse capitalized. And what it did was it gave you human connection through voice, right? And so there was nothing really like it at the time. And so it just spread like wildfire.
Right.
And at the time, you were able to get to the leaders of the world. At the time you could speak to the Rashads and Bilals of EYL, excuse me, the Rashads and Troys of EYL. You could speak to the Gary V's. You could get on with the celebrities. You could get on with, CEOs of companies. At that time, nobody was out. So everyone was on Clubhouse. So if you capitalized on that, you were able to get to people that you never would be able to get to ever, because those people would just naturally be busy. But at that time of the pandemic, when everyone was stuck inside, it was like Clubhouse was the place to be. And so if you leverage that platform at that very specific time, you you elevated. And I
Yeah.
did. I used it like crazy. I was on that thing 7-8 hours a day, you know what I mean, for months. And L'Oreal used to get upset with me, but I was like, no, no, like we got to do this. And because I did that, like I would probably credit, no bullshit, I would probably credit Clubhouse on why 40 Tons is a nationally recognized company.
Hmm.
Like single-handedly, Clubhouse did that for us, because I was on it every single day for 8 hours a day. I got to meet people from all over the world and all over the country and build relationships with these people that I normally never would have been able to build.
Yeah. Like,
You, Even you guys, you know what I'm saying? Like I never
yeah.
would have met you guys without being on Clubhouse. So it was like that was a time that was just it was a very short period of time that if you leveraged it, you won.
Right. Yeah, I remember when Clubhouse came pop, I was on it. I was on it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember like all of a sudden it became watered down. But this is probably towards the end of the pandemic. Well, actually, no, probably the middle of the pandemic it started getting more watered down. Um, you would have people claiming to be experts, but that's kind of like anywhere. But yeah, I remember me and you would talk, and you would just be like, "Yo, I met so and so, I met so and so," and I'm like, how are you meeting all these people?" Like to me, that was like really crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It was all from Clubhouse, you know. It was all from Clubhouse. It all started from Clubhouse. So, I was thankful that I got to be a part of that era at that time and leverage it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm assuming that wasn't your first time really leveraging social media.
No, I mean, I've used social media in the past, but that was it was different because you could speak to people. It was like
Hmm.
a direct two-way conversation between people. Whereas before, social media is a one-way thing. You make a post, someone comments, back and
Right.
forth. But this was, um, you know, the first time that a platform put everybody together at one time, and it was it was pockets. So like if you were in the cannabis industry, then you had the cannabis groups. If you were in entertainment, you had the entertainment groups. Tech had tech groups. So like it was an area where it was everything got filtered to your um, industry.
Right. Right. Yeah, I used to spend a lot of time in the crypto groups. Um,
Hmm.
I avoided the relationship groups because it's like it's always weird to me to hear other people talk about give relationship advice and then you look at them and they're single. It's like, you
It
know,
makes no sense. Yeah, I mean
it
everyone's
makes-
an expert, right? Everyone's an
yeah,
expert.
yeah, yeah,
You know how it is.
yeah. So oh, this is one thing I wanted to ask too. So you talked about what was his name again? He's also the co-founder.
Corvain.
Corvain, yeah, Corvain. So why is it that when people decide to take their case to trial, why is it that they end up getting more time if they're found guilty?
What's that noise? Is that your side?
Yeah, it's an alarm.
Oh, okay.
Shit,
Um,
no way.
it's an unfortunate thing in the justice system that if you don't uh take a deal or you don't not go to trial that you get punished more. So for example, and this is just arbitrary, a certain crime carries a certain uh amount of time that it comes with, right? So let's say you get a crime that is that you can be given anywhere from 5 to 10 years, let's just say. um if you take a deal, you can get the 5 years. But if you go to trial and you lose trial, not only will you get the 10 years, but sometimes they'll punish you and they'll double it up, right? And you'll get 20 for that or whatever, right? It's just the way that it is. And unfortunately, he had two strikes, two previous drug convictions, but the drug convictions were bullshit convictions. Like one was for a pound of weed and the other one was for not having a prescription for codeine cough syrup. So it wasn't like it was super big anyway. But there's technicalities, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, when you go to trial, it's like you piss them off, you know what I mean? And so it's like it shouldn't be that way, but it is, and that's how that kind of stuff happens. And then when you're dealing with a technicality and you lose trial, you can be given the mandatory like a mandated sentence. So it's mandated that you have to get life when you have three strikes. That's where the three strikes and you're out comes in. If there's no three strikes law, then you could not get life, right? It could be up to the judge, and the judge can, give it based on that individual instance. But because of that three strikes law, it's like you're screwed. So it's like that's why you hear about the guy getting a life sentence for stealing a piece of pizza. it's not the pizza that got him a life sentence. It's because he had 2 previous convictions that gave him strikes. That on the third one, it gave him a strike and he goes to jail for life. So that's where like that law is really outdated and draconian, because it's like there's so much nuance and circumstance. Like, I get it, even if you are a career criminal and you've been in trouble all your life and you keep getting in trouble and you steal a pizza, you should be punished, but you shouldn't go to jail for life over that because of a technicality. You know what I mean? And so that's where, criminal justice reform and things like that need to take place in this country, is for that very reason.
Got it. Yeah, I agree. I heard it. I remember. I can't remember which state, but a guy stole some cigarettes and he ended up getting locked.
Yeah, something ridiculous, right? That's what happens, man. That's what happens. Um, is there any way to turn that alarm off, or no? You're stuck with it.
I'm stuck with it. I thought they fixed it, so I'm just gonna ask a question and mute.
All right.
um, yeah, I can edit this out, but what is it? Because you mentioned your wife or whatever. Like, what is it like having a company with your wife? Like, how do you juggle? You know, how do you compartmentalize every facet of your life with her being the CEO? Like, how does that work?
It's tough working with your wife and your significant other in business, especially for me. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm the one who's more tough on her than her vice versa on me. And that's because, like, I'm a perfectionist and I like things to be ran right. And I know what it takes to get to the next level. And 99.999% of people don't have what it takes to be a millionaire, and they don't have what it takes to get to the next level. And so it requires a certain set of discipline. It requires a certain set of knowledge. And so because of that, I'm very hard on those that are closest to me because I know what's at stake. And so it can become challenging, being that drill sergeant, and you're having to be a drill sergeant to your best friend or to your wife or to your husband or to your brother or to your sister or whoever that person that's close to you is. It can be difficult. But then on the flip side of that coin, you have ultimate trust. And it's somebody that you know that you could get into the pit with. It's someone that you know that if things go bad, they're not going to go nuclear on you just because, you guys got into an argument. So it's a gift and a curse. I know that I could probably be a little bit more graceful and I could be a little bit more forgiving when things don't happen. But I mean, I enjoy it. But then I also sometimes don't. Um, it's a balance, right? It requires balance. And like for me, I have a gift and a curse, and that's like, it doesn't matter if you're my mom. It doesn't matter if you're my wife. It doesn't matter if you're my kid. It doesn't matter if you're my brother. Like, if you're not putting up the work, like, you're gonna get drill sergeant, which is a gift and a curse, because what it does is, the gift is that it doesn't allow you to get lazy. It doesn't allow you to get knocked off your rocker. But then the curse is, in you becoming a drill sergeant, you become, you know, the asshole, so to speak, right? So it's tough. You got to know how to balance it. But um, you know, I'm very thankful for her. I'm very thankful for working with friends. I'm thankful for working with the various people that are close to me, because the trust factor is there. And I think if you have trust, that is a solid foundation for going into business with anyone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's not easy, man. Everyone says that it is. It isn't. It's tough.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Like I've considered starting a company with my fiance, but I'm like I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean I got a lot of years with mine, so it's like we know each other. We know when to push, when to pull. But she also does a lot outside of the business. That allows me to be able to work on the business so much. You know what I mean? And so you need someone like that as well. You need somebody that's caring and comforting and loving and 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 could keep the family together.
Yeah, because you got kids too. Like, and I missed that. Like, how do you juggle being a father or being a dad? I mean, in that as well too.
Yeah, man, it's tough, man, because I'm always working, man, and to me, I'm not satisfied. Um, in business until I'm financially free, and I'm not financially free. So until I'm financially free, it's go mode for me. It's Energizer Bunny. It's going until we get there. And unfortunately, with that mentality, you miss a lot of time, and you're not present a lot of the times. You're physically there, but you may not mentally be there because you're constantly on the grind trying to get to the bag. Um, and I have a lot of responsibility for I have a lot of responsibility for my family. And I'm trying to set my children up so that they don't have to go through the struggles and the trials and tribulations that I went through. You know, and that's a lot. Being a coach, being a manager, being a father, being a husband, being a provider, all in one thing. You know what I mean? And it's tough, but I mean it's also rewarding. You know what I mean? I get to be around my children. All my children live with me. I've been with them since they were born. I come from a broken family. She comes from a broken family. Um, you know what I mean? And a lot of our friends come from broken families, and we manage to keep it all together in this day and age, especially being in a mixed marriage and dealing with racism and dealing with prejudice and all this other shit. Um, you don't find people my age that's been together with theirs for that long. And we've had our problems and our ups and our downs and our moments and our shit gets real. But at the same time too, like we held it down for one another regardless of all of the BS that comes with it, and put our family first. And I think if you put your family first, then that's the secret sauce. When you put yourself first over your family is when things go bad. But when you put your family first is where I think, you'll see success in that realm.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Family first, yeah. Um, so do you believe that women make better CEOs than men?
I'm indifferent. I think there's good women, I think there's bad women. I think there's good men, I think there's bad men. So I don't think that your sex has anything to do with whether you're a good CEO or you're not. I think what makes you a good CEO is your experience, your ability to be a leader, your knowledge, and the ability to get others to buy into your vision. And if you're a woman, then you're a woman. If you're a man, then you're a man. I think 99% of people don't qualify to be a CEO. So it's got nothing to do with even men or women. It has to do with who you are as a person.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'll
Um,
I'll go to war for anybody if they're worth going to war for. Doesn't matter their age, their sex, their orientation, their religion, their age, their culture. None of that matters to me. What matters to me is who they are as a person and can they get the job done. And if they can, then let's go.
right.
That's why I respect my boy Brandon. He's young, he's 27, 28, whatever. Um, and that don't mean shit to me just because he's young. You know what I mean? Like he's somebody that's proven that he's an effective leader. And so if you can prove that you're a leader, then I'm willing to be a teammate. You know, I've been a leader most of my life. I'm the one who's always put into the Kobe Bryant Jordan role. So I know how to play that role. I would prefer to play the Dennis Rodman role, right? And be the contributor and be the person that is responsible for 40, 50 points, even though they only made 3 or 4 shots. But because their intangible game was so strong, it's what allowed Jordan and Pippen to make all those baskets, was because you had someone like Rodman fighting for every possession, getting 20 rebounds a game. You know what I mean? Fighting for the balls, getting the steals, doing all those different things, right? That's what made Rodman such a great player. That's why I consider Rodman being one of the best, like number 6 players of all time, is because he knew his role. So like if you're a Kobe or a Jordan naturally, being the Rodman is easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Question:
analogy that I
Do
use.
you think Draymond is better than Dennis Rodman?
Do I think Draymond's better than who?
Dennis Rodman.
Man, Rodman will beat the dog shit out of Draymond. And don't get me wrong, Draymond is a monster. I give nothing but respect to Draymond. But it's like, what's what's a shark to a killer whale? You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So it's
yeah,
like that to me. Rodman was just vicious. He knew how to get in your head. You know, Rodman had that game like Gary Payton. You know what I mean? Gary Payton was a beast too. Gary Payton knew how to control everybody, right? Because he was in your mind. But Rodman was
yeah,
also super physical.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And he
Eh,
knew how to fuck with you, and he knew how to get in your head, and he knew how to do it. And he was vicious, and he would fight, and he wasn't scared, and he would take the hits. You know what I mean? I call that intangible, right? There's intangibles with the game. There's intangibles with business, right? That person that's going to put that extra 3 minutes on the email to make sure that things are bolded and highlighted and bulleted and things like that. You know, the extra sauce. You know what I mean? Making sure that the hat is just put on right. You know what I mean? Like that is called the intangibles. And you can't teach that. You know what I mean? Intangibles, you either got it or you don't. And so, like, when you got intangibles, that's where it's at.
yeah. And I got two things to say, and one is a comment, the other one's a question. The thing about Dennis Rodman, he could guard every position. Like there's videos of him shutting down.
There's videos of him shutting down fives. You know what I'm saying? Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
he shut down Shaq. There was a video of him shutting down Shaq. I mean, and that was the hand check era. So he was guard, and he was 6'6". Jordan said he was probably about his same height, but he was just strong as like an ox too. So
Yeah. You never heard Jordan complain about him.
nah,
That lets you know something.
yeah,
I have my
yeah.
own theory behind it.
What's your
I
theory?
I think him and Robin got into a fist fight. I think Robin put hands on him, and then Jordan gave him his respect.
Really?
I do. Because Jordan didn't
Mm,
take shit from nobody. Jordan will whoop your ass if you showed any ounce of weakness. You know what I'm saying? And if you didn't put in the work and the hustle and the drive, you know, when you're at Jordan's level, like Kobe, you know what I mean? Like, you can't slack around a person like that. And dude, Rodman would fucking go and do cocaine and get hookers the night before the finals, and Jordan didn't say shit. That's because Rodman showed up.
mm.
You know what I mean? Rodman
So
was
who do you
there,
think
and I
won in
think
that fight?
Rodman
You're saying that you think
and
they fought?
Jordan might have got
Because
into a physical altercation to where
I heard about the
Jordan
Steve Kerr. But who do you think won between the two
between who?
if they did fight?
Between who? Between Rodman and Jordan?
Yeah,
Rodman.
really?
Rodman beat his ass. That's what I think. That's what I think.
Yeah,
This is just a theory. There's nothing proven it. I think that that's what happened, or at least he hung with him to the point where Jordan respected him because Rodman was a dog and he'd fight to the death, right? And when you have somebody like that on your team, you're unstoppable, right? That's why I got so much respect for Rodman. All the bullshit that comes like in the news and him dressing like a girl and all that other bullshit and marrying himself, that's all his private business. When he was on that court, he was unstoppable. He was just unstoppable, man. That's why I just got so much respect for him because his game was just impeccable and it's like an analogy for life. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to be the leader, but you can be super respected by the leader if you just show up.
right, right. And it's the stories of him. Shaq told a story about him being on the treadmill with some knee high boots, combat boots, having a full on conversation with him, and the incline was like 20 or 30 or something. He's doing that for an hour, and then he goes to the club without showering. Like, yeah,
I
those
mean,
the
that's the
stories
kind of
about
shit, you
Rodman.
know what I mean? Like that's where he knew mentally how to throw you off. That's why I got a lot of respect for Gary Payton too, man, because Gary Payton knew how to control everything. There's a good episode of All the Smoke where they're interviewing Kevin Garnett. And Kevin Garnett is sharing a story about Gary Payton. And it's a phenomenal, phenomenal interview. And dude, you could tell the love that Matt Barnes and Kevin Garnett and I forgot his name, Steven, the other guy from all
Steven Jackson, yeah,
Steven
Steven
Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah. So Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, and Kevin Garnett, they just got so much love and laughter for Gary Payton. It's hilarious. I mean, you saw the Jordan documentary where Jordan's laughing, looking at the thing because that's Gary Payton talking shit, and you can see that like Jordan is it's a belly laugh. You know what I mean? Like it's a pure laugh because it's so funny because he remembers exactly how Peyton was because Peyton would get into your head. So like that's a whole nother level of game. Like it's not just about the skill set, it's also about your ability to communicate. So when you're a master communicator and you got skills like in the physical, it's over with because you use both of them to your advantage. And I think Rodman did that really well. Rodman knew how to communicate not just with his words but with his actions. So I
Yeah,
use that in business all the time. I love that analogy because it means it perfectly explains the role of the role player.
right, right. Like he what player today in the NBA do you think is like a good embodiment of Dennis in regards to having raw talent and then also being like a master communicator?
I don't know. I don't think there is one. I mean, I think like you said, you got the bulldog of Draymond. I don't know, man. I don't know because they don't play like that no more. You know what I mean? Who else is a who? You know, I mean, Giannis a little bit, but I don't know, man. There's really nobody like him. That's like saying who's like Gary Payton. There's really nobody like him. You know, there's really nobody like him with all the different rule changes and the way that they've done things now. And there's no more hand checks, and you know, there's all the hack a Shaq era is over, and like you know, the physicality of the game is nowhere near like what it used to be. Um, I don't think it breeds those types of individuals anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good
You know,
point. So I want to speak about your kids for a second. How do you teach? I know you say you can't teach anybody intangibles, but how do you try to teach your kids the importance of just having those intangibles?
you know, you teach by telling, right? You teach by showing, but you only can get good at these things by doing. You know what I mean? So it's like you can practice public speaking all you want. You can practice standing in front of the mirror speaking. You could practice memorizing a speech. You could practice all that. But you're never going to know what it feels like to go out and speak in public until you're speaking to an audience and those feelings that you get. So you definitely want to teach your children the reps, right? And teach them how to do things. But it's really about pushing them to go out into the world and get those real world experiences where they learn those things. You know, like my son, he just got back from Atlanta late last night, and you know, he flew himself out there for Techpreneur Con, right? And bought his ticket, got his airline, got his hotel, did everything on his own, went to a conference, right? And like that is what's going to teach you how to be out there into the real world. It's going to teach you how to go and make things happen for yourself. And so I think him seeing his mom and dad be like that, as well as his mom and dad speaking to him about that and providing him opportunity. But until he takes the step to do it himself, he's never going to know. And so I think that's how you teach your kids is just showing them how to do things and then having the environments for them to actually go and do those things is where it's going to stick.
Got it. Got it. So I wanna go back to the weed industry and stuff like that. So I was watching Rick Ross. I mean not Rick Ross, but the real Rick Ross interview with Ray Freaky Ross with on Blackout. He talked about how a lot of your incumbents in the industry were former illegal drug pens,
Right.
right? How does it make you feel, when you see your co-founder go through what he went through, and then you see people?
There it is. There goes the alarm.
I'm gonna
Um,
react.
no, go ahead, finish your statement and what the question is. Like, how does it make me feel seeing my?
Yeah, so so like I watched the Freeway Ricky Ross interview on Blackout, and he talked about how there's former kingpins, and even one guy he spoke about was a line with the one of the cartels, Mexican
Uh-huh.
cartel. How does that make you feel when you have your co-founder who went through what he went through, and then you know people trying to break in, but you see people who made a lot of money illegally, and they're like just taking over the industry?
I'm happy. I'm happy that people from the legacy are getting their shot at being a part of this industry, right? They were the ones that took the risk in the early days to make this plant legal, right? Now, other drugs and other things, I don't have a comment on that, but like those that sold weed in the beginning days when it was illegal, and those were the ones that got in trouble for it and put their lives on the line, I think that they should absolutely have a seat at the table, because if it wasn't for those people, we wouldn't have an industry. It took people going to jail. It took people dying. It took people, you know, basically a revolution on the plant in order to get that plant to where it is today. And we're still not all the way there. You know what I mean? We still have a long way to go, but we've made a lot of success. And so I think that those that sold in the legacy market, I think those that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, those growers that were in Humboldt, there's generations of growers. Your father's father have been growing in Humboldt. Those people should absolutely have a seat at the table. If you went to jail for cannabis, and you actually sold weed, like not just getting pulled over with a joint in your car and then now all of a sudden, you want to claim that you were legacy. But I mean, if you were really legacy and you really did sell the plant, like I think you should have a seat at the table and let the market dictate whether or not your company survives. Still got to put out good product. You can't put out trash. You know what I mean? You still got to compete on price and all these other things. But it's about the access and the opportunity. You know what I mean? I think that there should be access and opportunity for those that um, are in the legacy, that came from the legacy market, as well as get access to things like banking and other things, right? Because typically we've been kept out of that because of our past.
So where do you see the regulation going for the industry, as particularly around legacy people who were, harmed by it, but then just the legalization of marijuana? Do you think it's going to how far off do you think we are from the entire U.S. where it just being legal?
That's a great question. I I don't know. Just when you think that it's going to happen, it doesn't happen. And then when you're least expecting something, something happens. I still think we got a few years to go before we see a full legalization. Um, I think we need to get all the states legal first. And I think when all the states become legal, at that point is when feds will make it legal. We're close. You know what I mean? I think we're like 39, 40 states are medicinal and approximately 20 something are recreational. And I think when we go fully medical, and then when we especially go fully recreational, it's going to be at a point where it's like, come on, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? But I think we could do some things prior to then, like decriminalize the plant, like making it not a crime, right? But the only way to technically do that is to deschedule it, right? And so we have to deschedule, which is the whole thing of legalization, right? So it's like, who knows when that's going to happen? But I mean, I think like if medicinally it goes on all states, and then states make laws that they're not going to prosecute, I think we have a closer chance of becoming legal at that point. Safe banking and some of these other things in order to allow small businesses and businesses to thrive is going to have to happen soon. The industry is really, really bleeding really, really bad. They're overtaxed, over compliance. It's being squeezed really, really bad. And it's causing companies to fail. It's causing large companies to fail. It's causing industry to falter. And what's going to end up happening is the big boys are going to come in and pick up everything for pennies on the dollar and push the industry out. Cannabis is the last industry that marginalized communities can get a piece of and have real generational wealth. You know what I mean? There's no other industry in the world that exists that will allow for marginalized communities to be able to get generational wealth. This is it. There's nothing else. Every other industry is embedded into society, healthcare, tech. You know what I mean? Um, Hospitality. Bioscience. Everything it's gone already. You know what I mean? There's no generational wealth for folks that look like you specifically, Corey. Right? So, cannabis is it. So we have to fight for it, and we have to push hard, and we have to survive, and we have to figure out how we can stick around, build brands,
Yeah.
make ourselves sustainable. And they're not making it easy for us because of the overtaxation, ridiculous amount of compliance. There's just way too many touch points, no interstate commerce. The cost to do business is just ridiculous in this industry. Lots of people aren't paying their bills. So it's really tough, man. It's really, really tough.
So as a cannabis company, right? Your company, what are some things you're doing to have that staying power?
Definitely finding the right strategic supply chain partners so that I can actually put good quality products out. And then attaching our brand to a mission. We're a socially conscious business, right? We believe that no one should be in prison for cannabis. As we scale and make profit, we can take some of the money and redistribute it into our communities, building programs to right the wrongs of the war on drugs and being that different type of company, right? Our story makes us unique. Corvain serving a life sentence, the different things that we've built, like our career conferences and our ways to help people get jobs and level themselves up. These are ways that we stay different, right? We collab with a lot of good brands and companies, and I think this is a way that we can stay strong. And if we can build our direct to consumer pipeline where we own our customer, that's how we become valuable to these bigger companies. You know, is by owning your customer.
Right, right. Yeah, and talk more. What does actually? I know what it means, but for better explanation, what is direct to consumer? What is that model exactly?
Well, direct to consumer just means you have a product that you can sell directly on your website to a consumer. Whereas, having to put something through retail or wholesale is different, right? Um, Cannabis is only sold through licensed retail entities. Therefore, it's tough. But direct to consumer, like, this hat or this jacket, that's a direct to consumer product. And so there is what's called hemp products versus cannabis products. And hemp products fall under the Farm Bill. That's like your CBD, your hemp derived Delta 9, Delta 8, things like that, right? And so there's direct to consumer plays there. And so we have a direct to consumer gummy. We partnered with an incredible company called Mini Grown out of Minnesota. And those gummies you can buy directly on our site at 40tonsproducts.com. And so that's direct to consumer, right? Is having that direct pipeline of you put something up, customer can buy it, but they buy it directly from you and not a third party like a retailer or a wholesaler.
Got it. Got it. Um,
There it is. That's got to be. Does that go off at night too, like in the middle of the night? That's got to suck if it does.
yeah, we had
What is
they
that
did
like?
an alarm test like a week ago or something like that,
What
like
type of
last week.
alarm is it? The smoke alarm?
So each apartment has its own alarm, but then I think if your apartment alarm goes off long enough, then it just ignites the entire building. And there's like three different buildings. But like I think the alarm system is on a per building basis, like the whole building. Like I'm in building one, so building one has its own alarm system, but each apartment has it. So if somebody's cooking and they don't turn off their alarm, then it ignites the whole building. But I don't know what's going on right now. And there's a lot of people that work from home that live out here, so it's annoying as fuck. um, what was I about to ask you? So why hasn't, like, I remember I was watching the Mike Tyson podcast, and the guy he brought on, they was talking about weed, and one of them said they learned that the federal government had a patent on weed. I think it was a specific compound, but even back then it was obviously legal, and there's like a lot of historical stuff how they just demonize people who smoke weed or whatever. But would love to get your like historical context on like America's relationship with weed. Like, why hasn't it taken it this far, even though there's so many medicinal benefits of ingesting it, right? Like physical ailments. I mean, there's a story about a little girl who had epilepsy, and it healed her epilepsy. But yeah, would love to get your like historical context on the relationship of America with weed.
Well, I think that weed was criminalized in order to build a system to incarcerate people. The prison system is a multi-billion dollar, if not trillion dollar industry, and it's designed to get free labor. And I think it goes deep. And when they abolished slavery, they had to figure out a new way to still get free labor. And so the prisons, the industrial prison system was built. And I think cannabis was a really easy way to lock and incarcerate people. And so they built this whole infrastructure behind that. And, there was probably a lot of racism in the early days. Black jazz artists typically smoked a lot of weed, and black jazz artists, you know, got all the girls back then, you know what I mean? And so, like, that could have caused a lot of hatred and a lot of racism. And, I think that, that compiling with, that over time develops these systems to oppress individuals. And so I think cannabis was a big part of that. Um, and so, if you want to legalize cannabis, you have to figure out a way that the opponent, I guess you would say, or the enemy, but I don't want to call them the enemy because like we all want to work together. But I think like you have to figure out a way on how to replace that economic system, right? Because if you get rid of that, you're getting rid of a lot of infrastructure. So you have to figure out how to replace it. You can't just get rid of one system for another one because the other system's going to fight it. So you have to figure out how to replace that. And I think I think this country also doesn't want to heal people. It wants to treat the symptoms because it's a money making society, and it's more lucrative to keep you sick and give you medicine to deal with your sickness as opposed to curing your sickness. And so I think cannabis has that capability of curing and eliminating that would interfere with that economic system, right? And so that mixed with your racism, mixed with your, infrastructure to create the industrial prison system going is what's caused it to be the way that it is. But that was 100 years ago, right? And we're evolving and we're moving into different, lack of a better word, different times in our society, right? And I think that if we just keep pushing, we're going to get it. You know what I mean? I think that there needs to be a big enough lobby and there needs to be enough money in it. There's not enough money in it. It's only like a $50 billion industry. That's peanuts compared to, the alcohol industry or the, the tech industry. You know what I mean? Like when one single company can buy the entire cannabis industry, that the industry's not that big yet. You know what I mean? So we have to get there, right? And I think with the way that we're going, we're going to continue to get there, but we have to knock down these stigmas. We have to not, we have to knock down the norms, and then create ways that we can all work together and we can all profit together. That's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is basically we need to reimagine how the prison industrial system works because that will also help the cannabis industry grow or the legal cannabis industry grow.
Say that again.
We need to reimagine how the prison industrial system works today.
Yeah,
And then once we do that, that'll also help or put less pressure on the growth of the cannabis industry.
perhaps that could be part of it. And then you have the other side of it, which is the medicinal side of, you know, treatment. You know what I mean? And, we need more studies, right? You spoke earlier about the government having a patent. That's problematic for innovation, right? You need time to study things and time to do stuff. And if that is not allowed, then you're never going to get to a place where you could really know the true effects of something, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's a mixture of both things. And I think that we're getting there, we're getting closer. And I think some of the people that were against it are now starting to come around and seeing that there is more benefits and there is more medicinal value. But at the same time, they're part of a system that goes against it. And so we have to figure out ways on how to solve the system, because some people will just say, well, you need to burn it all down and start over. But burning everything down just causes everyone to get burned, and it causes destruction and damage. So we have to figure out ways on how to do things to still keep the economics going, but then also like solve the problems that are actually happening.
Yeah.
If
And
you
it,
if you take
and I
over
was going to
anything
say,
by brute force, you're always going to be in fear that whoever's the stronger power is going to take over again.
yeah, and I was going to say, like, you look at our healthcare system, it's controlled by insurance companies. And so, like, I'm thinking too, is like, what if, or I think when insurance lobbyists really start getting into the cannabis industry, and when you start seeing, like, all of a sudden you can buy cannabis with your FSA or it's covered under your insurance, I think when that happens, then it's going to be, the
And
growth
that
is
will
going to
happen
be
when we
crazy.
become legalized, right? But until then, we're still just a small $50 billion industry, which is nothing compared to, some of these other industries. Like Anheuser-Busch can pay 50 billion for a single brand, right? If I'm not mistaken, didn't they or somebody buy Modelo for like 33 billion? That's one company. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we need to be a bigger industry as a whole, and then we'll get the power. But we're getting there. You know what I mean? When we're a $500 billion industry, that's when we're going to start having power. It just takes time to get there. And the people that want that power are going to put protocols in play to keep the average person out of it. So we have to just keep pushing and keep fighting and keep trying to get to this level in order for us to be able to have a say so.
Right, right. So how do you remain like resilient and like keep the energy up and then also like be there for your family, like emotionally be there. Like how do you do that, man?
I don't
Like,
know, man. It's a gift and a curse, man. I have this thing where like I can just keep going and going. It's part of my DNA of who I am, man. Like I was bred to be a teammate. You know what I mean? I was bred to be a go-getter and somebody that, contributes to his team, and I'm blessed. I have a lot of good people around me. My children are amazing. L'Oreal is amazing. Certain family is amazing. And so, having that good team around you and just, being invested in, having good mentors. Um, you know, I'm also a lifelong learner. So it's like I love education. And so I'm constantly trying to educate myself. And I think when you pursue education, doors open for you because everybody wants to teach you. Everybody wants to give you the game. Everybody wants to talk. You know what I'm saying? So are you willing to listen? And are you willing to not just listen, but are you willing to take the teachings and go implement? And I think when you're a lifelong learner, that's what makes you resilient.
right, right. It's cool, man. It was, oh yeah, yeah. So the other question I had too is like how do you juggle like multiple businesses? Because you got a few.
Yeah, that's tough. I try not to. I try not to. The only two things I'm working on right now is 40 tons and Rightsy. And Rightsy, I have a very specific role with their like video and interviews and content. So I've been doing that for, 20 plus years. So I fully understand how to do it and optimize it. And then 40 tons is just tough, man. There's like 10 businesses inside of 40 tons. I just manage it. You know what I mean? I understand the vision, and I think the vision is what keeps me going, and I understand the capabilities of what it can do for us on a financial level, and because of that, I'm dedicated to it.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, man. My last question is, so what's next for 40 tons? What's the immediate year, 2 years look like for 40 tons?
Yeah, man. Well, we want to partner with different supply chain partners in different states that can help bring us to market. We really want to push hard on our direct to consumer hemp derived gummies that's with mini grown right now. Um, I will give you guys all the Trap Talks listeners 20% off if you go to 40tonsproducts.com and type in Trap Talks 20. That'll give a 20% discount. So we're over the next year, we want to push that as much as we possibly can. Um, we want to write thousands of letters to cannabis prisoners. So one of the things of when you buy a gummy, if you want to show them what you get a postcard, and that postcard, is a letter. Show the other side, and we put a stamp on it as well as an address, and then now you write on the left side a message to them. And so this is our way of doing social justice, and letting the people know that are in jail for cannabis that we ain't forgot about them. And so we want to send thousands of letters out this year. And then we also want to host our career conferences, the Level Up Career Conference. We have one in New York and potentially one in Los Angeles. And we want to help people get jobs, expunge their records, and help them level themselves up. So that's what's on the trajectory for the next 1 to 2 years for 40 tons, is just really growing, really becoming profitable, gaining revenue, and then potentially entering into the licensing world. But for right now, we're lean and nimble, and we have a model that we think can be scaled across the country, the world, really.
Cool, cool. And for y'all, I didn't even. Yeah, I didn't even know that he was going to give out a promo code, so he surprised me there. So y'all learned it when I learned it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, man.
But yeah, anything you want me to ask? Anything else you want to add to that?
Um, man, just always be learning. Learning is what's going to get you to the next level, right? Competition is more and more these days, right? So the more you know, the more you grow. And so I think that education is a really, really big, big thing in my book. And what makes it important as well is using what you've learned. So a lot of people are in love with just going to school, and school could come in any format, but they don't take what they learned and actually go and use it. That's where the knowledge is. That's where the rubber meets the road, is taking what you've learned and actually implementing it. And so that's what I leave, man. Keep hustling, keep trapping, keep talking, and show love where you can, and provide value at every single point in the system.
Yeah, man. Thanks for that, man. I'm definitely gonna stay trapping. But yeah, man, lifelong learner. I love it. But yeah, y'all, I want to thank y'all for joining us. This
Something
is
must have
Corey
happened
State,
with your
Corey State Trapping with
on your
Trap
side.
Talks, where we discuss the intersection of culture and tech. And thanks, Anthony, for joining us with 40 tons. Take care.